For 3 incredibly long years, America just watched from the sidelines as Europe basically tore itself apart in the Great War. The country was absolutely determined to stay neutral, but as we know, that all changed. So today, we're going to dive into the pretty dramatic story of how the United States was pulled from that neutral corner right onto the world stage, changing not just the course of the war, but its own destiny forever.
So, how did this happen? How did a nation so committed to staying out get dragged in? Well, believe it or not, the answer really hinges on a single secret piece of paper, a telegram that completely shattered American neutrality. It's the key to the whole thing.
All right, to really get the shift, we have to rewind a little bit. From 1914 all the way to 1917, Europe was just engulfed in what everyone was calling the Great War. And America's position? Stay out of it. President Woodrow Wilson was crystal clear. This was Europe's fight, not America's problem.
Now, this whole policy was rooted in a really powerful idea called isolationism. For most Americans, the war was literally an ocean away. It was a distant, messy European thing. The guiding principle for the U.S. was simple: avoid getting tangled up in foreign messes at all costs. Save American lives and American money.
But here's where it gets really interesting. You've got this official stance on one hand, and then you have what was actually happening on the other. While the government was preaching neutrality, the Allied powers, that's Britain, France, and Russia, they desperately needed supplies. And where did they get them? American banks lent them money, and American factories sold them goods, which of course created a huge economic boom. So yeah, while America was officially neutral, its economy was already picking a side.
You can probably guess that this delicate balancing act, official neutrality on one side, economic involvement on the other, it wasn't going to last. A few key events started to chip away at America's resolve, pushing the nation closer and closer to the edge of war.
It really all came down to two major provocations from Germany that just made staying neutral impossible. The first was this aggressive campaign out on the open seas. And the second? Well, that was a secret message that brought the threat of war right to America's own backyard.
So, in 1915, a German U-boat torpedoed a British passenger ship, the Lusitania, completely without warning. Over 1,000 people died, and that included 128 Americans. The news was horrifying back home. Germany's policy was called unrestricted submarine warfare, which basically meant any ship in the war zone, civilian, military, didn't matter, was a target. Suddenly, the war wasn't an ocean away anymore. It was costing American lives.
But if that wasn't enough, the final straw came in 1917. British intelligence intercepted this secret message from the German Foreign Secretary, Arthur Zimmermann, to Mexico. And the proposal was just stunning. It said that if the U.S. entered the war against Germany, Germany would help Mexico reclaim Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Can you imagine? A European power was actively trying to start a war on America's border?
That was it. The Zimmermann telegram just blew the lid off everything. Public outrage absolutely exploded. President Wilson, feeling like he had no other choice, went to Congress and asked for a declaration of war. Just like that, the policy of neutrality was over. The United States was officially in the war.
Okay, so declaring war is one thing, but actually fighting it, that's a whole other ballgame. The United States now had to mobilize on a scale it had never, ever seen before. It had to turn its entire peacetime society into a serious war machine.
And the scale of this was just staggering. While factories were churning out war materials, the draft called up over 4 million American men into service. Think about that number. This massive new army became known as the American Expeditionary Force, or the AEF.
So these troops, the AEF, led by General John J. Pershing, they start arriving in Europe in June of 1917. And you could just imagine the boost to morale for the Allied troops who were completely exhausted by then. The fresh energy, the fresh resources from the American forces, it was decisive. They played a huge role in key battles like the Second Battle of the Marne and the massive Meuse-Argonne offensive, really helping to turn the tide and push the war to its end in November 1918.
So the war ends, but its impact was just beginning. It didn't just redraw the map of Europe, it fundamentally reshaped the United States. The effects were felt in every part of American society, and it totally elevated the country's position on the world stage. Back home, things were changing fast. With millions of men overseas, who do you think filled all those critical factory jobs? Women and African Americans. And this new economic clout, well, it helped fuel the movements for women's right to vote and for racial equality. For the economy as a whole, the war was like rocket fuel. By the time it was all over, the U.S. wasn't just another country, it was the world's leading economic power.
Now that the fighting was won, President Wilson turned his focus to winning the peace. He showed up to the negotiations in Versailles with this grand, ambitious vision. It was a plan known as the 14 Points, and it was designed to fix the root causes of the war and basically create a blueprint for a lasting peace.
And the absolute cornerstone of his whole plan was the 14th point, the creation of a League of Nations. The idea was simple, but pretty radical for the time. Create a global organization where countries could get together and talk out their problems instead of shooting at each other. It was supposed to be a system of collective security, to make sure a disaster like the Great War never happened again.
And this is where the story takes a really ironic, kind of unbelievable twist. The very nation whose president came up with this whole new world order would end up turning its back on its own idea.
So this just created a massive political fight back home. You had Wilson, who saw the U.S. as a leader in this new global community. But in the Senate, a lot of powerful people were saying, whoa, hold on a minute. This league sounds like it's going to drag America into every single European conflict forever. And that old feeling of isolationism came roaring back.
And in the end, the isolationists won. The Senate flat out refused to ratify the Treaty of Versailles. That meant the United States never joined the League of Nations. It's pretty stunning when you think about it. The architect of this new world order was going to be absent from his own creation.
And all of this leaves us with a really powerful, lingering question. The United States came out of the war as a global superpower, but it immediately pulled back from the world stage politically. So by stepping in to end one war, only to step right back out again, did America's absence accidentally help create the vacuum for another, even deadlier conflict just down the road? It's a question historians still debate, and it's a crucial lesson on the responsibilities that come with power.